Very good morning, everyone. Please remain seated, but let's put our hands together for the arrival for guest of honor, Minister of State, Mr. Alvin Tan, and Her Deepness, Dr. Sylvia Earle. Woo! Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am ecstatic. I am so excited to be with you, all of you, this morning for the opening of the second Melting Ice, Sinking Cities Climate Exhibition themed as the Arctic Impact. My name is Kareen. I'll be with you for the entire morning, and I hope that you are happy as well because today I am feeling wonderful this morning. Not only we are surrounded by the beautiful greenery, I am also greeted by a sea of beautiful people. Can you all give yourselves a round of applause first? Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for having a heart to care for our planet Earth. And of course, today, this morning, we're going to learn a lot about how we can help make a change for our Mother Earth. And we are all gathered because of various organizations who have put a lot of effort to bring this exhibition together. So with that, as I announce their names, could I kindly request for a little bit of applause as well? First up, this exhibition is presented by City Developments Limited, CDL, in partnership with National Parks Board, as well as the Ocean Geographic. Very lovely. And it's also supported by key knowledge and content partners, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, PUB, Singapore's National Water Agency, Urban Redevelopment Authority. Thank you for the warm applause. And of course, not forgetting the academics from National University of Singapore and Nanyang Technological University, the High Commission of Canada, as well as the local NGOs. A round of applause for everybody. Thank you. And this edition is actually the second edition, remember, just now I said. The first one was actually back in 2023. Anyone was here for this, the first one? You were here, do you remember the theme? Antarctica, right? I know, it was just like you are too far away for me to hear. Okay, and this is the second edition. We are focusing on the Arctic. So, and it's also the fourth installment of the Climate Action Exhibition series. And today, 2026, we are turning the attention to High Arctic, which is one of the fastest warming regions on Earth. And we will, at the exhibition, which you will also experience later on, we will feature insights from Big A's 2025 Bears Ice Glaciers Arctic Climate Expedition. And we also will focus on the realities of melting glaciers, as well as the threatened wildlife and vulnerable communities that are closer to home for us Singaporeans. So later on, as you proceed up, you will also immerse in the 5 different zones, which will showcase how changes in the polar regions are directly linked to rising seas, extreme weather, as well as the future resilience of our cities. And so today, we would like to make it a start to call upon everyone to take part in building a low-carbon, nature-positive future for all of us. And right now, may we please put our hands together to welcome CDL Group CEO, Mr. Sherman Quek, to deliver an opening remark.
Guest of honor, Minister of State for National Development and Trade and Industry, Mr. Alvin Tan, Dr. Sylvia Earle, Deputy CEO of NParks, Dr. Yap Him Hu, Excellencies, partners, distinguished guests, and colleagues. Very good morning, and thank you for joining us today at the second Melting Ice Sinking Cities Climate Exhibition, the Arctic Impact. So, I was just remarking to Minister Tan, nothing like kicking off the morning with a super bubbly and very cheerful and energetic MC in Karine here. So thank you to her too. So, last night, I had the privilege of actually catching up with Dr. Earl, or Sylvia, as we affectionately call her, over dinner, accompanied by many of her aces, so those who have gone with her on the expedition to the Arctic and the Antarctic as well, which includes our very dear Esther too, and I have to say it was a very, very inspiring conversation. For sure, Sylvia is the strongest lady I know, both mentally and physically. I mean, even though she's 90 this year, but she's still diving, an avid diver, and you really get the sense from speaking to her that there's nothing that makes her happier than being under the water. And she dives a lot, so that was pretty amazing. And she travels a lot as well. I mean, I wouldn't even get into a travel schedule, but it's it's a pretty big thing. And she inspires all of us, I mean, with her actions. I mean, last night we were chatting a lot about diving too, although I've never dived before, but I spoke to her about it, and I asked her, what are the most dangerous things you encounter when you are diving? And she says, I asked her, like, are there deadly species or sharks or some other, sea creatures? And she says, no, actually the most dangerous are other divers. So, and Sylvia is right. I mean, the truth is, we human beings are, we have a lot of good in us, but we are also a pretty destructive species. I mean, we have managed to destroy a lot of our planet, and of course, destroy our own species too at times. So, the truth is, we really need to redouble our efforts and try to achieve more meaningful change. Sylvia was saying last night, I hope you don't mind me being dramatic. She was telling me about how, there's a real climate emergency. And actually, I turned out to be even more pessimistic than she is. I mean, we will give everything we have to try to make a better world. But the truth is, too little is being done, and it's too late. You see, so and obviously there are certain nations that are retreating from commitments and goals. So it just means that the rest of us have to redouble our efforts. I mean, it's not the time to give up. Yes, I don't think we can meet some of the lofty goals and the net zero goals that people have, organizations have committed to out there, including ourselves. But it doesn't mean we stop trying, So, okay, you know what? I better, do a bit of a speech about this exhibition. Otherwise, my team may not forgive me for that. So as I said, thank you for joining us today. Since 2013, we have partnered with NParks. Okay, so they're a very, very important and dear partner of ours to really bring stories of nature, climate, and the environment to life through this CDL Green Gallery, located in the Singapore Botanic Gardens, as you all know. And we have also just renewed that partnership for another 10 years, which will include refurbishing the gallery, as well as doing many more exhibitions. And this gallery is a net zero gallery, so obviously, through solar panels and all that, I mean, we try to ensure that whatever, power is used here is all generated. I mean, and we really do want to encourage and inspire people to support Singapore's vision of a city in nature where urban life coexists harmoniously with green spaces, and there's a deeper care for conservation and sustainability. I mean, since the gallery has been open, it has hosted like 23 exhibitions on biodiversity, climate action, sustainability, and nature. So we've had more than more than tens of thousands of visitors. So hopefully we'll be able to attract more. And as our MC Karine mentioned earlier, I mean, in 2023 we launched the first edition of this Melting Ice Sinking Cities. And so today, we're here to launch the second one of this Melting Ice Sinking Cities, but it's actually the fourth edition of this climate action exhibition that we have done over the last few years. So it's actually the fourth one in this climate series. And this new exhibition builds on the foundation by shifting our focus to the Arctic. So the last one was on the Antarctic, right? So now it's on the Arctic, okay? And highlighting how the changes at the poles really have ripple effects far beyond the polar region, reaching tropical areas like Singapore, right? I mean, the Arctic is warming faster than anywhere else on Earth. In fact, the thickest and oldest Arctic ice has declined by more than 95% since the 1980s, right? So leaving a very thin, fragile of kind of first-year ice that melts very easily. So this is actually really not good for us. And according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the loss of this summer sea ice in the Arctic has been rapidly accelerating, right? The loss has been averaging about 12% per decade. Okay, and for the 2024, when they looked at it after the melt season, okay, the amount of missing ice amounted to 1.94 million square kilometers. Okay, so this is an area that's actually larger than Alaska when you think about it, than the entire Alaska. So it's very, very substantial. It's a clear sign, okay, that there's a very disturbing, warming trends going on in our climate system. And the melting of polar ice, as all of you know, contributes to global sea levels and rising global sea levels, and affects ecosystems, wildlife, and our human communities. Species like seals and polar bears are experiencing habitat loss, and there's reduced hunting and breeding grounds. And these changes in the Arctic actually influence atmospheric and ocean circulation, increasing the likelihood of extreme weather, highlighting the urgent need, okay, for a global attention and action. And beyond rising sea levels, the polar changes also affect global weather patterns. So, rainfall consistency, agriculture, food security. So a lot of things are actually affected. As you know, the whole world is intertwined. It's a chain reaction. And so, this exhibition, which you'll see later, invites visitors to witness the science, hear the voices of the affected communities, and reflect on our shared future. It urges policymakers, business leaders, educators, families, and the general public to confront the climate realities with urgency, creativity, and very importantly, with compassion as well. So we're not just here to witness and observe alarming trends, but to hopefully be inspired to act, innovate, reduce emissions, and build adaptable societies that are prepared for change. So anyway, in closing, thank you again, first off to Minister Tan for gracing this event. Really appreciate you lending your time and support. And earlier, Minister Tan was sharing about bills that are passing in Parliament that will provide even stronger protection, such as coastal protection and stuff. So very encouraging, to hear Singapore really taking that step forward. And of course, to Sylvia, thank you for making the trip here again. This is our fourth time collaborating together. So really appreciate it, and for bringing all your aces together with you, including her grandson, Taylor, okay, over there, who is part of the aces. So, Taylor, please look after your grandmother. So Sylvia, we're really excited to hear more about the Arctic Climate Expedition, as well as your continued work in advancing marine conservation. And to our valued partner, NParks, thank you very much for all the collaboration over the years. We really appreciate it. We certainly couldn't have done it alone, so thank you for that. And to all of our knowledge partners and guests, we appreciate your presence in joining us for this important journey. So we hope that today's program will be an enjoyable one, and it will inspire you onto further action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Mr. Quek. Yes, certainly feeling inspired already. And because earlier on you mentioned that you don't dive, so I think for guests coming up later, we have to declare if we do dive. Okay, I am only an advanced open water diver, so I'm just like recreational. But to see you in person, Dr. Sylvia Earle, is such an honor, because I've read about you, heard about you. I've also watched videos about you. She has so many things under her belt. She has spent nearly 7 decades to pioneer exploration. and 17 years establishing hope spots across the ocean with your Mission Blue, as well as over 7,000 hours submerged underwater. And we call her also her deepness. Very, very affectionate term. I love it. And in 1979, Dr. Sylvia Earle as well, she set a world record walking untethered on the seafloor 381 meters down on the seafloor just using a gym suit. So inspiring. And today we are very, very honored to have her. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor to introduce a beloved living legend and one of our most influential ocean advocates of all time, Dr. Sylvia Earle. So wonderful to have you. No need. Yes, hands free. Please.
Thank you for the privilege of being able to be here in Singapore and celebrate the opportunity that some of us have had to go to the somewhat chillier parts of the planet, to Antarctica and more recently to the Arctic. I'm just going to keep this image on the screen because I really very much just like to talk with you, to share something that if there's any reason for me to be here and share your time, it's because I come as a witness, having seen over more years in more of the ocean than probably anyone else in the room, the changes that have been happening on my watch and now going forward. Greater change to this miracle of a planet, the blue planet, in a universe that's really not very friendly to the likes of us. If you want to go to Mars, sign up and be gone. I've got my list. Maybe you do too. I think it's great to explore the skies above. We need to do that so we gain the perspective, in part, of how special this place is. The world is basically blue. All life requires water. When I heard the figure that scientists have been calculating, it's 97% of Earth's water. We're terrestrial by nature, but we depend for our existence on the water that is in the ocean. And it's not just the water, it's the living systems that have over 4.5 billion years created a very friendly planet from our standpoint. So, what I have witnessed when I first began as a young scientist in the 1950s to see what it was like to breathe underwater and to see an ocean that was far more complete, an atmosphere of planet that has changed more because of us up to the present time than during any time in our history. We are so powerful by harnessing the technology that cuts both ways. With the technology that has developed in the last 200 years, especially the last century, particularly since the middle of the 20th century, when I began to wake up to the ocean, you think how much we have lost. At the same time, how much we have learned. I mean, the smartest people who ever lived before the middle of the 20th century did not know what Earth looked like from space because nobody had been up there. Nobody had been to the great depths of the sea. When you think getting to Antarctica, the continent, was not possible. No one had been there before the early part of the 1800s, not that long ago in the history of our species. the history of the planet. And in the Arctic, we're just beginning to explore what's there. I love the fact that those who were on the ship with me, I was with them, during the past year, documenting with images, coming with artists and scientists and others who come with what they've got, talents, each one coming together, and to have this exhibit. Thank you, CDL, for really making possible this way of sharing the view with people of all sorts, not just learned scientists and not just artists and musicians and kids, but the whole cross-section of who we are. It's exactly what we need to take what is now known and make it available so that everybody gets a glimpse of the trouble we're in. Imagine if we did not know the consequences of melting ice in the Arctic, in the Antarctic. Imagine if we could be and speak for the polar bears, the walruses, the seals, the creatures in the sea, creatures who live in the great depths in the Arctic Ocean. All of them are at risk because of us. Lucky us. Now we know. We have the power to change. We know what to do. But the real problem is around the world a profound sense of complacency. We can breathe today. We can get food in the grocery stores or wherever. It seems like this is the best time ever. It is, in so many ways. The one species that has multiplied incredibly to the point where we now have 8 billion of us with 8 billion minds and hearts and opportunities to act on what has happened because of our prosperity. Nature has gone in the other direction. We've consumed nature to foster our prosperity. But we haven't been aware until right about now, of the cost, of the danger we have put ourselves in by what we've done to the atmosphere, what we've done to the land, what we're doing to the ocean, and how fortunate we are because we still have time, but not a lot. Some of my learned scientific colleagues are serious when they say, and I want you to take heart, they've got about 5 years, not 50, not a century, not 1,000 years. We have right now to focus on what all of us can do. As you go through the exhibit and look at the evidence, take it in, and then think about, what are you prepared to do? Alone, to yourself, and then teaming up with others? Saving the world is a team sport. Nobody can do all that is necessary, but everybody can do something. And if you team up with others who know what you don't know or have something they can do that you can't do, that's how we have progressed from here to great prosperity, to hold that prosperity, to be able to look forward to a planet that is mostly blue, that the children of today, we have an obligation. We are the beneficiaries of all the learning, all of the evidence of what brought us here, to keep it at a level and not degrade, but certainly to continue to at least keep the natural systems intact and to protect what we can of what remains, restore what we can. I mean, bravo, Singapore. This city, this country, you are leading the way in ways that if we could just take this exhibit, take what you're doing, and get others to follow the leadership here, we'd be in a much better place. I'm personally determined as a self-appointed voice for polar bears and walruses and deep-sea creatures and for people too. I just think that we've got the best chance we will ever have, but you have to know before you can care. Why this exhibit, why you coming together here, why the Ocean Geographic Society, why Mission Blue, why we're coming together. It's the best hope we have. There are a lot of people who are still remarkably complacent, but we cannot let that continue. I say thank you. I don't know why I have the authority to say anything to this group, except that I've been around for a little while. I've seen the ocean from the inside out. I have to speak for them. I have a grandson who's 3 years old. He's a great grandson. Grandson here is a little bit older. But I see the future in their eyes. And I'm personally determined, and I hope you will be too, not just for the rest of your life, but for all those lives coming along. Ourselves and the rest of life on Earth is truly dependent on what we do or fail to do right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Dr. Earl. That's so beautiful. Yeah. Another round of applause for Dr. Earl. It was a very powerful message. When she said a word, it actually resonated with me. It says complacency, that we are actually doing prosperity. We're enjoying prosperity at the expense of nature. So now we want to do something for our planet Earth, and we want to know how we can do it. And the next person that I'm going to invite up, he's going to share with us perspective of how exactly, what role can each of us do to drive change. And ladies and gentlemen, may we put our hands together to welcome Mr. Michael Au, founder of Ocean Geographic.
Good morning, Minister Tan, Alvin Tan, Sherman, Dr. Sylvia Earle, Esther. Good morning, everyone. I have a very short time, so I speak quickly. I speak for the voiceless. How it came about is I have the privilege of facing a polar bear right in front of my lens, with the breath on my lens. And there, my life has changed forever. I speak for penguins, I speak for ivory gull. 98 of us went out to the Arctic this year, united to give our voice to the voiceless. It's nothing what it feels like for you. Imagine one day your house just collapsed beneath your feet. And that's what's happening to the polar bear. So I think what speaks better for us is to have the next generations to tell you about from the perspective. So first we have Hilary O'Sullivan. She's a young Singapore pianist that have performed in the Antarctic on the ice, and also recently in the Arctic with us with a grand piano in the furthest north ever, nearly 82 degrees north, on a small piece of ice. Hilary, please share.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Hilary O'Sullivan, a grade 9 student in Singapore and one of the youth climate ambassadors at Big Ace. I'm deeply honored to share the stage with Michael Au and Dr. Sylvia Earle, whose work has shaped the journey that brings us together here today. Last year when I went to the Arctic, I saw walruses, seals, and majestic polar bears. They are beautiful animals that depend on the ice around them, and yet they cannot speak for what they are losing. The Arctic, the Antarctic, different places, same message. Our poles are disappearing, and it's happening now. What if each one of us uses our voice, our talents, and our choices to help protect the Arctic and all the life it supports? Every voice matters. That's why this exhibition is so important. The images you'll see are not just beautiful, they are calls for you to use your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you. Hillary took time off from school to come here and speak to you today. And then we have another Edward Bennett. I had the privilege of mentoring him in photography. He flew all the way from New York City, time off school, to share his voice with you.
Hello, I'm Edward Bennett. I'm 16 years old in 10th grade. And I'm excited to be here today, part of the next gen of the Big Ace. And at its core, I believe the greatest challenge of our generation is reconnecting humanity with the natural world. Something the renowned biologist E.O. Wilson summed up beautifully when he wrote, "We are not separate from nature, we are part of it. Our survival deeply depends entirely on the health of ecosystems that provide us clean water, breathable air, pollination that feeds us." Sitting in the Arctic, I could feel and understand this truth deeply. What I've learned is that the Arctic isn't somewhere else. When the sea ice melts, it stops reflecting sunlight back to space, accelerating warming everywhere. When the permafrost thaws, it releases carbon that affects every ecosystem on Earth. The Arctic's crisis is our crisis. The Big Ace expedition taught me that bearing witness demands bearing responsibility. We don't need to visit the Arctic to understand that our future is written in its ice. What changed me wasn't just seeing the crisis. It was realizing I returned home to systems designed to perpetuate it. Climate storytelling carries a sacred responsibility to connect what happens in distant places to the air we breathe and the water we drink. Because Wilson was right. We are nature. And when we destroy polar ecosystems, we destroy the life support systems we depend on. You who are decision makers, every delay in climate action is a choice to dismantle the ecosystems that keep us alive. My generation will hold you accountable for that choice. Do you care about humanity and our Earth, or will you throw away the future for short-term comfort, money, or power? Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Edward. When I wrote the song Voices for the Voiceless, I'm writing for all of us, encouraging everyone to give our voices to nature, to the polar bear, to the penguins. So the next gen is featured in this short video, and it was recorded during our expeditions. I hope you enjoy it and join us in action for climate. Thank you.
In the whispers of the wind, where the glaciers stand tall, we gather our dreams for the ones who can't call. From the icy expanse to the shining skies, together we rise for the earth and her cries.
Voices for the voiceless, we stand hand in hand. For the creatures of the wild will make us stand. With hearts wide open, we'll carry the sound. In unity we're stronger, let love abound.
From the depths of our oceans to the peaks full of snow, we hear the call of the earth. It's time for us to grow. Every heartbeat echoes, every tear that is shed For the future we envision, let's tread where we're led.
Voices for the voiceless, we stand hand in hand. For the creatures of the wild will make us stand. With hearts wide open, we'll carry the sound. In unity we're stronger, let love abound.
So let the melody soar over hills and streams. Together we'll create a world of dreams. If we shine our light through the shadows of doubt, we'll ignite the flame that the world can't live without.
Voices for the voiceless, we stand hand in hand. For the creatures of the wild will make us stand. With hearts wide open, we'll carry the sound. In unity we're stronger, let love abound.
So let's sing for our future, let's sing for the air. For the ice and our oceans will show that we care. Voices for the voiceless will rise up so free. Together we'll write a new history. In harmony we'll stand, united as one.
For the earth and her beauty, the fight's just begun.
Love it. Such a beautiful song. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Hillary. And thank you, Edward, for sharing this with us. Actually, I thought that was a very beautiful tune. And Michael, your t-shirt, as well as Esther, you have the t-shirt that prints Voices for the Voiceless, right? I think we can all learn the tune together for the first line, okay? Voices for the voiceless, we stand hand in hand. Is that correct? Okay, now I can teach all of you. Okay, let's all do it together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Voices for the voiceless, we stand hand in hand. Give yourselves a round of applause. Beautiful, beautiful. We stand hand in hand. And when we stand hand in hand, when we have somebody to lead us, that would be perfect and that would be wonderful. So the next person that I am going to invite up on stage, he has been taking notes from the beginning in his small little notebook, thinking about what he can do to lead us and to make a change as well. Can we please welcome Mr. Alvin Tan, Minister of State for the Ministry of National Development and Ministry of Trade and Industries, to say a few words. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Maybe if we can pull, not my face, but the Sylvia's taking a photo of that. Actually, Sylvia, I wanted to put that picture of that body of earth and the body of water. If you can just pull that up a little bit, because I always don't like to see my face on that. Right? Yeah, but it's a very, very tough act to follow, because first you have Sherman, and then you have a living legend, and then you have two young youths, one from Singapore, one all the way from New York. Hillary, I probably can write a letter for you to skip school, but Edward, you are on your own. Yeah, I don't have jurisdiction over New York. And then you're Corinne singing. So it's a really tough act to follow. So please, next time, let me speak first, rather than at the end. But you know, Dr. Sylvia Earle and Sherman and Yap Him Hu, Dr. Yap Him Hu, who's our Deputy CEO of NParks, thank you for all coming today, and thank you for all making this effort. I thought I had a privilege, like Sherman and Nick Sheng did, to meet with Dr. Sylvia Earle this morning, and that's why we're a little bit late, because like many of you, I deeply admire her. I deeply admire the work that she's done, pioneering that work. By the way, I did a calculation, and you are probably 75 years older than both Hillary and Edward. And still going down to the depths of the ocean and inspiring us. And that's why earlier this morning, when we had the privilege of speaking to Dr. Earle, we ask so many questions about marine blue, about your hope spots, and we just tap into your vast knowledge. Singapore, as we had discussed earlier this morning, is on the other side. And even if it's on the other side, it will find it a very hard place to spot Singapore because we're just minuscule. But as you rightly pointed out, the Earth is primarily blue. And as you always say, no blue, no green. Today I tried to wear green and blue. But you're absolutely right. And you know, with such a small, minuscule island nation, barely 750 kilometers square, not much we can do. But Sylvia is also challenging us to say that we are a catalyst for change. Earlier this week, in addition to green, we are not quite surrounded by ocean, we're surrounded by sea. And we have 750 square kilometers of land, but we also are exploring space. So earlier this week, we launched the Singapore Space Agency. We don't really have a right to do something at land. Certainly no right, because we're not an ocean-faring nation at sea, and certainly no right to go beyond into the black, but we try to do as much as we can. So today I thought it might be useful to discuss who matters, what matters, and then why it matters, if you don't mind. So who matters all of you matter. Dr. Sylvia matters very, very much, but what you're doing is also you are laying the foundation for a new generation, like Edward, Hillary, and many of us as well, in between, including Taylor, your grandson, and also your great-grandson, succeeding generations. Then later on, we discuss a little bit about what matters. What is the reality that is confronting us as a planet, as well as 8 billion of us on this planet? And then third, how it matters. How it matters to the planet, and also how it matters to Singapore, and what tiny Singapore can do in the whole scheme of things. So today, of course, we are here, as Sherman mentioned. I have to give the speech, if not, the team is going to be nervous, and that's why Sherman also experienced that. We are, of course, pleased to launch this second meeting, or second edition of the Melting Ice Sinking Cities Climate Exhibition, the Arctic Impact. And to talk about who matters, this exhibition is a vital partnership, Sylvia mentioned it earlier on, between CDL, Ocean Geographic, as well as my colleagues at NParks. And also I want to thank the more than 10 knowledge partners who have made great contributions to this effort. Sylvia, of course, Dr. Earl, has spent a lifetime exploring the depths of our ocean and reminding us what happens in the most remote parts of the world is never truly remote. As she often says, the ocean is the blue heart of the planet, and it touches you with every breath you take. So, who matters? Dr. Sylvia matters, Hillary and Edward matter, all of us in this room matters. But what matters? The Arctic may feel far away, although, Michael, you made it seem very close to us, but its signals and its impact reach all of us. When a glacier cracks in the high Arctic, its ripple travels thousands of miles, eventually reaching the equator and tiny little Singapore. The first Melting Ice exhibition in 2023 brought us to the Antarctica, as Hillary mentioned earlier on, where vast ice sheets once thought immovable are now clearly in retreat. Today, we stand at the opposite end of the world, the high Arctic, where the ice is thinner, the chances and the changes are faster, and the warning signs are growing louder. The exhibition then also marks the global premiere of the Melting Ice Sinking Cities, the Arctic Impact. So it's not just going to be in Singapore, it's going to travel the world. And the exhibition shows, later on as we go, how the Arctic is not just at the frozen edge of the planet, but a keystone in the global system. When the Arctic ice melts, it sets off currents of water, air, and consequence that reach tropical island cities on the equator like Singapore. I'm looking forward to visiting the exhibition because it will feature powerful images from Big Ace, led by Dr. Earl, in 2025, where it captures moments where solid ice gives way and long, stable systems begin to fracture. Finally, why it matters. It matters to the world. The exhibition that we're about to launch makes clear that the Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the global average over the past 4 decades. That's half of your life on Earth. And you rightly pointed out that it is moving faster, and we don't have decades, we have years. The sea ice is retreating earlier with each year. Glaciers are thinning, and extreme melt events are becoming more frequent. And these changes are altering ocean circulation and weather patterns worldwide. When the Arctic shifts, the entire climate system recalibrates, often in very unpredictable ways. So it matters to the world, but the Arctic and Singapore are really almost half poles apart. So why does it matter to Singapore? Well, Singapore may sit on the equator, but we are not insulated from what is happening at the poles. Climate change does not respect distance. What cracks the ice at the Arctic raises the waterline everywhere, impacting Singapore. In fact, about 30% of our land in Singapore's land lies less than 5 meters above the mean sea level, making us particularly exposed to rising sea levels and heavier rainfall. Our relative mean sea levels around Singapore are estimated to rise by up to 1.15 meters by 2100. I can't even say that because it's so far away, but it will rise about 1.15 meters. And you combine this with high tides and storm surges, which we are seeing now, water levels could reach up to 5 meters above today's mean sea level. So it is an existential threat to Singapore. But Singapore is not alone. I just came back from Cebu in the Philippines, but across our regional cities in Southeast Asia, coastal cities like Bangkok, and archipelagic cities, countries like the Philippines, are already facing many of these challenges. More frequent flooding, stronger storm surges, and growing stress on infrastructure and communities. But rising seas do not just flood streets. They erode coastlines, displace habitats, disrupt livelihoods, and slowly reshape how cities function. In fact, I spoke to the Philippine minister who is in charge of Cebu, and she made those exact points. If you're an archipelagic nation, you are even more vulnerable in that regard. And recognizing these risks, Singapore has taken a long-term and comprehensive approach to combating climate change and also climate resilience. Now, Edward, I liked what you said. You mentioned holding us to account. That is important. Singapore accounts for 0.1% of global greenhouse gas. Important to hold the bigger countries to account. Very, very important. That message you are preaching to the choir here, please go back to New York and maybe up north to hold to account. It's very, very important. It's there, you can see that. You can't see us. So, for a very mini, small, tiny island nation, what are we doing? Well, let me share a little bit about what we're doing. Our Public Utilities Board, PUB, manages inland and coastal flood risk holistically. Since 2021, we have conducted site-specific studies to design tailored coastal protection solutions. And we have recently completed conceptual designs to protect areas such as the Greater Southern Waterfront and Changi, which is where you land, I think 2 days ago. And earlier this week in Parliament, I was just in Parliament yesterday, moving 2 motions for Singapore to play our part in MAS bill, because Abby is here, my MAS colleague. We were moving a motion for Singapore to play our part to contribute special drawing rights to the IMF to help other nations, and we feel that very strongly. And in Singapore, earlier on Tuesday in Parliament, we just introduced a coastal protection bill. This new law will require landowners to implement and maintain coastal defense. So, Sherman, private landowners as well as the public landowners. NParks, my colleagues, him, who, and his team, has established a marine conservation action plan to safeguard our marine ecosystems as warming seas place increasing stress on our biodiversity. We are also developing Singapore's first national adaptation plan. It's a living roadmap that sets how we will strengthen our resilience over the long term together with many Singaporeans. we are also the first in Southeast Asia to introduce a carbon tax. And early this morning, please, okay. Some of the businesses don't clap that much, but, but even as, well, seawaters are not retreating, but some global efforts are retreating from global climate efforts. We are not retreating. In fact, we think that this is existential. We think that we need to push on forward, even if there are some costs to us. So the carbon tax puts a price on emissions, and we are not just doing that, we are also supporting businesses to transition. And at the same time, with our colleagues at the Monetary Authority of Singapore, of which I sit on the board, we are building green finance solutions, working together with multilateral development banks, for example, like the ADB and others, to crowd in concessional finance to help, for example, to transit from coal-fired power plants and also to spur green finance. Yeah, so Singapore might be small, but we try to use our hub status, our strengths in finance, our strengths in economic and science to maybe make a little bit of a dent. Then we also mentioned earlier this morning, Sylvia, that we sit on as an observer on the Arctic Council, a tropical city sitting on as an observer in the Arctic Council. Of course, the Arctic has been also, Edward, in the news recently, but we think that we can play a part in exchanging information, learning from what's happening in the Arctic, and then make a small contributions in that regard. Finally, Sylvia, you mentioned this very critical piece about partnership and collective action. Now, climate change, as we have already discovered this morning, is a global challenge shaped by forces larger than any one country or any one continent or any one single government or sector. So if we want to do what you have challenged us to do, we need to build resilience, we need to work together, private sector, government, and also advocates, all journeying along this journey. So I want to thank CDL in that regard for your leadership in sustainable development and these initiatives that you are championing and sponsoring and putting together is very important because you are actually anchoring long-term climate action. Also, again, want to please join me in giving the biggest round of applause to Dr. Sylvia Earle for being a pioneer and also inspiring this action, and long may it cause ripples throughout the world. Thank you, Doctor, and thank you to all for joining us this morning.
Thank you, MOS Tan. May I also invite you to remain on stage, and you can proceed to the middle. You see a cross there? Yes. Okay. And then right now, we are going to invite our honored guests to join us on stage for the official launch of the exhibition. Can we put our hands together to world-renowned marine biologist, Dr. Sylvia Earle, holding on to a polar bear and coming on stage. May I invite you to stand next to MOS Tan. And also we have with the CDL Group CEO, Mr. Sherman Kwek. Yes, to stand here. As well as we have our Deputy Chief Executive Officer, National Parks Board, Dr. Yap Him Hu, as well as founder and CEO of Ocean Geographic, Mr. Michael Au. So Priscilla is here, and everyone is taking photos because this is a moment. I know all of you, you want to raise your cameras up as well. But do you see what color are these stacked up icebergs? What color is it? Red. And it also signifies that our icebergs are warming up. And right now, we want to cool it down together. So, y'all put the, here already. Can we reverse a little bit? Yeah, we reverse a little bit because we need to make a change together. Yeah, so you hold on to your bears first. Hold on to your bears. Samra, okay? Hold on to your bears first. And because all of these are red, the icebergs are red, we are all trying to cool it down together. And everybody, let's join efforts, okay? Let's count down together for all of you to put the polar bears all at once. All right, everybody, join me in counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Together. And watch the magic happen. We are cooling our planet all together. Thank you so much. And right now we will be enjoying a video. So may I turn all of your attentions to the screen and we can proceed to the side of the stage as well.
The Arctic is warming 4 to 5 times faster than the global average.
We're going to see sea levels rise by 50 to 60 meters. It's critical to understand that there is no business on a dead planet.
It affects everybody everywhere. That fire ripped through Los Angeles. Before we knew it, it was literally on our doorstep.
You have to see it for yourself to really care about something.
There is anxiety, but the antidote to all of that is action.
We need to have a voice in our own companies to say we're going to stop supporting those things that hurt the environment.
With awareness, we can expect action to create the positive impact that we need for a more sustainable planet, people, and future.
Arctic is melting, so is our future. And now we're calling on you.
The Arctic is a vital region of the planet. Being a part of the solutions, do what you can to really have an impact on the future of our relationship with life on Earth.
Lovely, thank you so much. And right now we're gonna do something that involves all of us in the room. Sorry, you wanna take one more picture? Okay, so can we all move to the polar bears and the icebergs again with the blue icebergs. All right, now we'll look at the camera. And smile. One more time. 3, 2, 1, smile. Many cameras, I'm sorry, just give us 1 minute. The photos will be available online afterwards. All right, and now this is one very important thing that we want to do collectively together, and also because there's a ripple effect, right? Now, our guests on stage will proceed down here and they will all face the screen. Just like all of you, we will all face the screen and we will take a photo together to make a change, all right? So please, to all of our guests and everybody, please stand up so that we can see you as well. This is a photo worth remembering. All of us are committed to cool our planet. All of us in the room, we can make a change. And if all of you can, we can squeeze in a little bit more so we look close and tight-knitted, all in unity, all in unison, wanting to prove that we can do something for our planet Earth. Like what Dr. Sylvia has said, we only have 5 years. And with that 5 years, we can definitely do something. Are we ready? Okay, the one camera that you need to look at is this camera. This together? Okay, you can look this one first, okay? And now everybody with your brightest smile. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, that was the silent one. Now we're gonna go for some commitment, okay? So when I say 3, 2, 1, all of us say the Arctic impact, okay? Okay? And then you can raise your hands up in the air. All right, everybody, are you ready? Yes? Oh, I can't hear you. I think the people at the front are ready, but the back, maybe we can hear a little bit more from you. Are you ready? Yes? Amazing. All right, everybody prepare your voices and also your hands up in the air. 3, 2, 1, the Arctic impact. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Please return to your seats. That was wonderful. You will see the photos online afterwards. Beautiful one. Thank you so much for making a change. Thank you for your commitment. And right now, We would also like to invite MOS Elvin Tan, Dr. Sylvia Earle, Mr. Sherman Quack, Dr. Yup, and Michael to first proceed to the Green Gallery for the guided tour. For all of us in the room, don't worry. The guided tour, the tour will be available for us after. We have still more things to discuss together. Thank you. Thanks so much. That was a beautiful song. And we would also like to invite our CDL senior management team and key knowledge and content partners to proceed to the CDL Green Gallery for a guided tour. For all of us in the room, we will be also visiting the gallery for a guided tour afterwards. And here's a fun fact for all of you as well. The CDL Green Gallery was the first net zero gallery in Singapore and the Asia Pacific that is dedicated to climate education and advocacy. And it was opened by former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong in November 2013. And it is also an exemplary model of CDL's green building expertise and extensive partnerships, welcoming an average of 34,000 visitors annually to the CDL Green Gallery. So afterwards, we will all be experiencing it, and I am very excited as well. Just give us a little moment. We will organize things a little bit, and we will continue with the program. And today we are also going to begin the second part of today with a panel discussion featuring our Big A's ambassadors. And this will be moderated by Miss Janelle Koch. Can we have our panelists up on stage now? Alison Budden, Kai Ting, Uliana Pina, Nithya Laila, Anne Lee, Marie Bennett, Christine Amor-Lavar. Please come on stage. Take your seats. Thank you. Later on, we will have opportunities for you to also experience the guided tour at CDL Green Gallery. But for now, for all of us, we will still like to hear the insights from our panelists. And may I invite you to first take a seat. And if you would like, you can also move forward as well. You can come forward so you can see our panelists in brighter view. For our friends at the back, you can come forward too. Why is no one taking the first row? Come, take the first row. That's the best view ever. Yeah. Please. We'll wait for everyone to settle in a little bit before we start. Yes, so later on we will have a time and opportunity to explore the CDL Green Gallery. So we first can stay and listen in for more insights. Come, move to the front, here. Yeah. We still have more seats at the front. If you would like to come forward. 1, 2, 3. 3 seats at the front. Nice. All right, and now I will hand over the time to Janelle as well as our panelists. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Janelle. I'm a member of the Ocean Geographic core team, as well as the organizing committee of Big A's, Bears, Ice, Glaciers, Arctic Climate Expedition 2025. Now, Big A's has many interesting aspects, and one of it, which I thought was very interesting, it is that it convened a diverse group of people, nearly 100 coming from 20 nations, varied ages from 8 to 90, as you've met, the 90-year-old, and coming from varied specialisms, expertise, and background. For example, today here we have with us, representing Big A's, a range of talents. For example, we have climate scientist, Dr. Juliana Peña, right? Am I saying it correctly? Marie Bennett. Marie is a professional musician. Dr. Alison Budden, environment advocate and global ocean expert. Nithya Laila, culinary anthropologist. Kai Ting Yo, who is a youth and community leader. She's also a journalist, editor. And Christine Amulava, who is, I would say, an ocean advocate, climate activist, an inspiration to her children and everyone around. She's amazing, she's led so many interesting projects. I admire you very much, yes. And En Lee, a pioneering sustainable finance impact investor. Now, today, we're going to share a little bit because we all came back transformed, armed with stories, feelings, evocative memories, some with data points. But most of all, I think we all came back with a sense of urgency to want to take action and confront the urgency to protect our natural commons. So let us do a sort of an informal sharing with all. What from Big A's, whether it is a sight, a sound, a feeling, data point, or even new friendships made, right, that shifted your view of the climate urgency. And, we can have whoever that wants to take this question. I can start with a quick one. I went to the Antarctic and the Arctic, and I would say, Uliana, that's a new friendship formed. She really inspired me on my first trip to the Antarctic and the Arctic as well. I learned a lot from her, and that was my inspiration, and I thought I carry different stories and what I learned from her to the people around me now. So anyone wants to?
I'm happy to go.
Yes,
yeah.
and
so being the only thorn among the roses. Good morning, everyone. I thought I'd go first. So this is quite special for me, actually, because I realized that the last exhibition I was here is when I met Sylvia Earle. And like many of you, I tried to take a cue to see her, and I couldn't speak to her. And then my friend had a son acting the play in the park, and I came to support that. And I came out in the lift, and I was with Sylvia. And I said, oh my God, Sylvia, I'm such a fan. I admire your work. And as an avid diver, I said, it's a dream to one day dive and to travel with you. And she held my hand and she said, what are you doing in June? And that's how I joined the Arctic expedition. So I'm saying all of you here, you never know which expedition you might join. So that's something really special, and it's a real privilege, obviously, to join Such amazing people on this Arctic expedition. It's life-changing. It is a multi-sensory and profound experience. And maybe I'll share one point. So I think in the panel today, everyone will share a little bit of perspective, but I was very fortunate to be part of the kayak team. And every day we'll do some kayak missions. And you know, I've kayaked many times before, but kayaking in the Arctic, you're surrounded by a symphony of sounds. There's so many pieces of ice all around you, different shades and colors. Many of the ice has trapped gases, as Yolanda explained, and it's like snap, crackle, pop everywhere. And as you're kayaking, what seems to be like a small piece of ice could actually be a little bit of a mini iceberg. So it's got this really, really sort of weird experience. And every 10 or 20 minutes, you hear this thunderous boom, and you see this huge cliff of ice collapse, and then you see this wave. It is breathtaking, but it is extremely powerful, because then you realize that, you know, the Arctic's really sounding this urgent alarm. You know, it's melting over 4 times faster than anything else. And, you know, the cascading waves makes me think that the cascading effects of that melted ice on rising sea levels, extreme climate events, loss of biodiversity, and so forth, right? It affects all of us, even in tiny Singapore. So that was a breathtaking moment. It's so beautiful, but that's the shocking reality.
Thank you. Another one, maybe? Marie?
Sure. Oh. I was just going to say, as a member of Team Kayak as well, which was just such a fabulous experience. And I agree with you with the sound, like the crackling of the ice that we just heard constantly. And occasionally we would put our paddles down and just stop talking, because we were chattering the whole time too. But just everybody paddles down and quiet just to listen to the environment. But I think also the thing that struck me was silence. You know, and you do hear a lot of sounds up in the Arctic, but a lot of these glaciers are melting, receding, drawing back in silence. And I think that sort of echoes what people are not aware of, especially back home. I live in Chicago. We're nowhere near the poles, you know, and just I think the Arctic can be silent for a lot of people who just aren't aware of it. And we can talk more about sort of our roles in bringing that sound, the silence and sort of the awareness of the Arctic back to our own communities where we live, you know, either right near the equator, nowhere near the Arctic, or, you know, just other places that seem very remote from that.
Maybe Christine, I think you want
to share.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, good morning. Great to see many friends in the room. I just wanted to share the first time I met Sylvia and how impactful it was. It was actually in the Antarctic. I was traveling with a team of scientists from the Earth Observatory of Singapore on a different vessel, not as nice as her boat. And we saw her boat in the bay in Antarctica. And the professor who was with us, Professor Benjamin Horton, who's a sea level rise specialist, said, well, let me check with her team if she's on the boat. She's on the board of the Earth Observatory at Nanyang. And she was on the boat, and we got to go, and we saw actually many of the people who went with her, you know, were on the boat. Esther was there, so we got to meet her, and it was just, you know, for me who had heard so much about her. I've been working in sustainability for close to 10 years now, taking all-women teams on expeditions to raise funds for charity, charitable programs that impact women's livelihoods on the ground. Just to meet her there was, you know, such a dream come true. And then when she came to Singapore the next time, we organized a few events together, and then she turned around and invited me to join. And honestly, I'd been to the Arctic a few times in Greenland and Siberia, but never so close to the pack ice, which you really have. You need a boat to get there, obviously, and we had to travel further than previous years, we were told, because of the shrinking of the ice. The pack ice was shrinking every year. And for me, that just blew my mind, yeah? Just to see that fragility all the way up north, never seeing polar bears before, and just being with an amazing group. We're lifelong friends now, all of us. It's just so good to see each other. Even though we're in Singapore, we don't always see each other, right? So I just wanted to share that. And the impact for me is just, you know, we have to continue to do what we can where we can, all of us, you know, in our own capacity.
Thank you, Christine. So let us move on to the next question, because we have a time to keep. And besides, on the note of impact, let's hear from each one of us here. If Big Ace inspires one commitment from all of us across our backgrounds, fields of expertise, what would it be, and how do we make it happen? Let's start with maybe Uliana again, if you don't mind. Yeah. So Dr. Uliana, just to give you a little bit more background, because I did a really quick introduction of her just now. She is a glaciologist, a climate scientist, a founder of Science in the Wild, and as I said, I've learned a lot from her. Given on this contextual limitations, time, and that we have, Uliana, if you were to make it concise for our friends gathered here today, if everyone here grasps one scientific concept about ice and sea level, especially for a location like Singapore, and goes away with one actionable takeaway to commit to, what would it be?
So we could start with the scientific concept first as you're walking through the exhibit and looking at sea level rise. So imagine you're at a restaurant and you get served a glass of water that already has ice in it, right? So that ice that's in there is the sea ice. So the sea level's not gonna rise when that ice melts. But what happens when your waiter comes by and brings a pitcher of ice and all this ice falls in? That's the land-based ice ending up in the ocean, causing sea level rise. And that doesn't stay just in the Arctic. It will affect coastal countries, coastal cities, like here in Singapore. So I think what we really need to be thinking about, coming from all different lenses here, is how we can communicate, collaborate, and do collective actions, to try to mitigate this. And I think it's really important to be proactive versus reactive, right? So when we think about our human bodies and we want to exercise, we want to sleep, we want to eat right, and we're trying to be proactive about our health versus reactive recovery, right? And so we're at that phase with the planet now, is how do we keep our planet healthy? We need to be eco-driven and not ego-driven. And so there's so many things we can do as individuals, right? And through collaboration, and then holding corporations and institutions to account.
And CDL's doing a great job, no? Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you.
I'm inspired. It's my first time to Singapore, and just seeing how advanced the country is, forward-thinking, sustainable. I mean, I'm really impressed, and I already have ideas to bring back home.
Great. To the bigger nations? Yes.
The one that shall not be named.
Yeah, I don't know, just bigger nations. Anyway, Marie, I was very lucky to be with you kayaking. I got to hear you perform on your Irish flute, and I know you're also a contrabass player, and an alto and bass flute player as well. Very talented young lady here. As a professional musician, educator and explorer, Explorers Clubs, no? Yeah, not yet. Okay, soon, right. Can you tell us what is your biggest source of inspiration from Big A's? Okay, and from your point of view, if there is one commitment from artists and musicians like yourself, what would it be?
Well, I think I think it's important to think about what artists and musicians do and what we can do in this. And I spent a long time thinking, I was like, I'm not a scientist. What can I do about climate change? I'll try to walk to the grocery store. I'll try to keep my footprint low. But then what can musicians actually do? And we're translators and connectors, right? So we don't take the place of science, but we can help translate the science into ways that other people might understand. And I think too, in this, also in my country, which shall not be named, we do have a lot of climate denialism happening, and a lot of, you tell people facts and people get very defensive about it, and sort of how do we get around those defenses? And I think music and art can be one of those ways, as you don't typically hear music and get defensive about it, so it's a way of sort of helping people enter into a different space, and then once you're in that space, you can tell the stories, and it's the stories about the species that are going extinct, and it's the story about the ecosystems that are in danger. And so I think as artists and musicians, that is sort of our role that we can take on, is taking something that can be abstract, like the Arctic is big and it's a long way away, and it doesn't impact our daily lives. It does, everybody in this room knows it does, but I think just being able to, get in there and kind of tell the stories in whatever way we can. So I think that's important for artists and musicians, is to keep showing up and keep finding the stories to tell and finding the ways through our art, whether it's music or photography or storytelling or painting, any dance, any of the art forms, just to keep telling the stories and trying to reach people and share stories that way. Because people don't make changes or care about things until they know about them. So that's one of the first steps, is awareness, and I think we can bring some of that through the storytelling, and then once people are aware that you can make things more personal through the stories, and then people are more inspired to take action.
Thank you. And I think one of the things was your music really evoked something in me. I think the song earlier did, I hope, evoked something in everyone, right? So that was powerful. It's Dr. Alison Budden. Hi. You are a global ocean expert, a storyteller, having built a global career dedicated to ocean conservation, specializing in ocean policy, community empowerment, and on top of this, co-founder with your twin sister, yes, Ocean Hope Club, yes, Ocean Hope Club, focusing on children's education, as well as a mother of 2 very adorable boys. Alison, can you share with us, from what you saw and felt at Big A's, how can we, especially through storytelling, given your expertise, and community empowerment, inspire the next generation to protect our blue planet?
Thank you, Janelle. Yeah, I'll just bring one quick story from the Arctic. Coming face to face and eye to eye with a polar bear was immensely profound, and it drew 2 quick emotions, one of awe and one of immense grief. And the grief was grounded in what we were witnessing. This huge female polar bear was standing on vanishing, broken pack ice. And in that moment, for me as a mother and as an ocean scientist, I was awoken to the reality that climate isn't an abstract science anymore. It is real and it is urgent. And not many people know, but the past 3 years have exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius. That has never happened in the history of Earth. We have now far exceeded the projections. 15 years ago when I did my master's, way before the Paris Agreement, 1.5 will happen by the end of the century. What if scenarios? And standing eye to eye with a polar bear made it personal and immensely urgent. And what Ocean and I heard from Sylvia on the boat, we asked her, what one message of hope do you have for the world standing in front of the polar bear? And she said, children. And so a huge, huge belief as part of Ocean Hope Club is that to protect, you need to connect. And so for me as an educator going forward, a profound thing that everyone can do, whether it's in your bedtime stories with your children or with grandchildren or with nieces and nephews, you can begin to relate storytelling, spark a connection with the Arctic and with the importance and wonder of ocean animals. And as educators, we need to see more curriculum in schools. We need ocean curriculum to be the basis. We need World Ocean Day, Arctic Sea Ice Day, International Polar Bear Day to really celebrate the white top part of our planet and why it's important. So I think from today, beyond this amazing room of inspiring people in front of me, I just invite you all to make a connection where as you walk around the gallery, keep in mind one photo, one memory, and go and spark that with your friends, your family, and the children around you. And the hope is one day we can, if we can start a new wave of an environmental ocean education curriculum, through some of the toys we're doing, through school community engagement, hopefully we can see the next Edward and Hillary's grow up to become the heroes that Sylvia has started.
Exactly. I completely resonate with that. I have a niece and nephew, actually 2 nephews and 1 niece to be precise and exact. And I'm trying my best, reading stories to them, telling them about the oceans, to the point now that they know that Sylvia is a real person, not in the story, and they're leaving voice notes to Sylvia, and she's like, can you send this to her? I'm like, okay, I don't think that I can be sending so many. I'll send a couple, but yeah. So it makes a really big impact when they tell you back and tell other people around them what they should and should not do and how they can do it. Completely resonate. Thank you, Alison. My dear Nithya Laila. Nithya, what you work with is likely to be of huge interest to many Singaporeans. Food, right? Nithya Laila is a culinary anthropologist, founder of Food Systems and Sustainability. So Nithya, can you share with us, is there anything from your experience on Big A's that may have influenced your work since, and a takeaway on how that will influence the way we eat or source our food?
Okay, so I am Singaporean, right? So food is a huge concern beyond my work. But as a chef and sustainable food system researcher, my idea of exploration was always like wet markets, farms across the world. I never imagined to find myself in the Arctic. And I expected it to be very, very, very cold and prepared accordingly, right? And I think I used about a third of the cold weather clothes that I got. It was so hot, which was very concerning, I think.
Very.
Right, it was really concerning. The water was above 0 degrees, which is just not right for where we were. But also, we were in this floating vessel. We went, I think, up to 82 degrees north. And this is one of the most kind of eco-friendly, sustainable ships out there for expedition and exploration. But even there, it was like a floating hotel, right? There was food always available. And the food had no time or place. You could get steak, you could get avocados, and I think that's what it made me think of, like the fact that we're so out of touch with where we are, with what we eat, and if we don't eat according to the time of the world that we are. Like, for example, seafood, right, or fish, or as Sylvia says, sea life.
Exactly.
We have always traditionally seen it as a source of nutrition. And now we know it is not as nutritious as we think it is, because we've polluted the oceans. So the fish is almost becoming toxic for us, for example.
Toxic fish?
Yes. So the lack of adjustment in consumer behavior, how do we change that? And I've been very lucky to spend some time with Jane Goodall in Tanzania. I spent time with Sylvia on the boat, and even in San Francisco, spent some time with her. And I was just observing them, these women in their late, they're 90, 91 at that time. Jane Goodall was 90 at that time. And I was just looking at what they were eating, what they choose to wear, and for them, conservation is not something that they just do outside. It's in the way they live their lives, right? They're both vegetarian. A jacket Sylvia Earle has is either from a sustainable clothing company, or it's 30 years old. Or 50 years old, which she has kept for ages, And Jane Goodall just wears the same uniform all the time. And I was like, it's about consuming less, consuming better. And, I'm not sure if longevity for the planet and ourselves is being plant-based. Is that the only answer? Or is there something else? But that's my work at the moment, to try and figure out what that is.
Yeah. Nithya, you have inspired me, to actually have a certain quota of how much meat I take a month. So I really cut down on my meat intake, and I actually count the number of meals I have taking meat.
Because you see on TikTok,
Yes.
it's all about protein at the moment. I'm not on TikTok, this is what I hear, so I'm guessing that's true. But it's all about protein.
Yes, exactly.
And it's figuring out how that's sustainable. But in Singapore, we have a lot of natural protein sources that are non-meat or fish-based.
Exactly.
So it's also looking to our histories, I guess, our grandparents, how they were eating over here. Yeah.
Thank you, Nithya. Kai Ting. Kai Ting is an experienced science and environmental journalist with a specialism and passion in wildlife forensic sciences and conservation. You also have a very strong footprint in the contribution of community work in Singapore, right? From your perspective, how do we rally Singapore's communities to turn Arctic lessons into local action, and what could that one initiative be for our Singaporeans?
It's a difficult question.
For a smart lady.
So I think there's no one-size-fits-all kind of solution, right? And I think conservation cannot and should not be just the work of scientists.
Yes.
I think right now there's a lot of good science out there, but then a lot of that stays only in research papers. I'm sure Dr. Uliana would agree. It stays in research papers or research communities, and the people who really should hear it don't hear it because they don't understand the complex science that goes behind that.
Yes.
So I think maybe if I were to pin down on one specific community initiative, I think it would be maybe to create a platform or a circle or network where people can come into direct contact or interaction with scientists who are actually out in the field doing their work, just for them to share the real human experiences that they have out in the field and the challenges that they're facing out in the field, and how that interconnects with how we are living our life.
Yeah, I think I have to say that that really resonates with me, because I literally learned a lot being there on ground with you. And we can do that here too. You know, there are a lot of like, I think, what do you call that? The nature walks, the low tide walks that MJ does. I think, yeah, intertidal, yeah, walks with MJ. For example, I mean, MJ is not the only one. I just think of her because she was part of our group, right? So yeah, that really helps, right, to bring in that knowledge. Yeah, Christine is the founder of Her Planet Earth, co-founder of Women on a Mission and Investors for Climate. She is also a champion of sustainable action and gender equality, as well as an inspiration, I've been told many times by her daughter, a strong inspiration to Angeline. By the way, Angeline spoke really well at yesterday's event. We had a smaller one, right? Anyway, what was your inspiration from Big A's? What commitment should we make, and how do we sustain the urgency into global, local climate movement?
Thanks, Janelle, for that. So my focus really at the moment is moving capital, very much so. When I started organizing these, expeditions, all-female team expeditions, now 13 years ago, because we did start with raising funds for women impacted by violence, abuse, domestic, I realized that women were disproportionately impacted not just by conflict and economic crisis, but by climate change, especially in our part of the world. As men go to the cities to look for work in many parts of Asia and Africa, women and children are left to tend to the crops and are really at the forefront of climate change. So there is a need to move different kinds of capital to tackle solutions, not just at the grassroots level, which is the philanthropic part of the work I do, with many of my teammates here in the room who have come with me and have fundraised and close to millions of dollars to try to fund these grassroots initiatives in agriculture, wildlife conservation, coral restoration. But I realized during the pandemic, just before I met Sylvia in the Antarctica, that philanthropy was just not enough, and we needed the urgencies there. She reminded us all today, we've got 5 years. And so being where you are with the skills you have, during the pandemic, I got a chance to pivot in my career by working very closely with some climate tech startups in Singapore. Minister Alvin Tan actually was also hosted by some of these startups. That's why we connected quite closely at the time, where we moved a lot of money from family offices, government agencies. Temasek, GIC had invested heavily in vertical farming, alternative protein, looking at our food insecurity in Singapore. As many of you know, we import all our food. This made me realize that there was much more to do to move capital towards innovative solutions. So the big focus of my work, and few people in the room are part of this community, is really trying to collectively bring this community of climate investors, not just in Singapore, but we're now across 40 cities with Investors for Climate, to build trust and collaboration, to influence the movement of capital towards solutions that directly tackle climate change in climate tech, biodiversity protection, looking at supporting foundations as they scale, but also looking at helping startup founders. So we have an accelerator program. So this is my way of trying to have an impact. And when I was in the Arctic, of course, many of our community were there on the boat. It just made the urgency, even stronger. And we have no time to lose. And every single one of us, I keep saying it, I try to tell my kids too, has beautiful gifts and talent. And in so many ways, fund managers can look at what they're putting into their portfolios. Philanthropists can look at what they're scaling on the ground. Teachers can look at how they're influencing the future generation. And I think that's all. Every single one of us can look at what we can do in our own way. And I'm just more committed since the Arctic trip, of course, to just use every single moment of my day to try to do that in different communities.
Thank you. Thank you. You are an inspiration indeed. Yes. En Lee, coincidentally, these two people in the similar expertise and field are sitting very close together. Enli is a pioneering sustainable finance leader and impact investor, founding force in Singapore's Sustainable Finance Association, and a member of various other boards. Can you share with us, En, taking inspiration from your experience from Big A's and in conjunction with your expertise, of course, where do you see the biggest disconnect between climate science and current investment practices? And if an investor walks in today, what is that one mindset shift you would hope they walk out with?
So I think first and foremost, we are all investors, big or small. Okay, and sometimes we forget that point. There's no such thing in solving for climate to think you're an innocent observer. We are all complicit to the problem. So that's the first thing. So I think the first thing I would say is, one of my learnings is you have to be proximate to the problems. So as an investor, for doing this over 2 decades, we focus a lot on sustainable solutions that solve global challenges, from healthcare, education, agriculture, energy, and climate technologies, for example. So to cite a very direct point, you know, Arctic is so far away. I'm not proximate to that. But for the last 10 years, my team and I have been investing in sustainable farms in Asia, for example. In the last 10 years, when we measure the spikes of essentially a climate event like El Nino and La Nina, alternating dry and wet spells, that compounding impact on yields, productivity, and farmer livelihoods. All of us here, because that's where they supply the food for us. That's caused by the climate. If the Arctic is melting, that is the thermostat breaking down, and you are wondering whether there's enough food in the fridge. So that's the first thing. My first advice is be proximate to the problem, even when they're so far away. If the thermostat is broken, we have a joint responsibility to fix it. Number 2, one needs to be super intentional. Many of us walk out here and then realize that when I ask you, what are you investing in? We have no idea. Oh, some company, some fund manager. Be intentional. Derive how they're getting their investments. Where's that return coming from? What's the impact, positive and negative? Because unless you know the intentionality and the impact of your investments, you're also not part of the solution. Okay, and all of us here, big or small, we voice the influence of our capital through our investments. And that's why it's so important. The last point, I think, having the privilege for the last 15 years to work for a very long legacy family, is the family has always taught us to invest generationally, to have that thinking. And that is one of the problems that's wrong with capitalism today. It is too short-term. We need to think long-term, and we need to think, how can my investments not just solve problems, not just let future generations survive, but thrive. And future generations will not survive and thrive without the ecosystem being healthy. And the Arctic plays a very, very critical role to that.
Thank you. Again, very moving speech, or, you know, I want to speak with you later, much more. I have to wrap up because I think we have to move on to the next segment. But I think the conclusion of it, I think it's intentional. We all have to take action. And what I have learned is that together, only by coming together, all of us together, combining our superpowers, I'm stealing that superpowers line from Sylvia, combining our superpowers, can we create a wider influence and change for our children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janelle, and thank you to our panelists as well for the very insightful presentation and discussion. And actually, I would like to add on as well just now, because Nithya was saying consuming less but consuming better. I personally also try to do that. Like for all of my clothes, I now am investing in thrifting. So sometimes you might see me at events re-wearing what I have worn for another event. I used to think that it is not possible and it is not acceptable, but in light of like caring for our environment and consuming less and consuming better, I also feel like we should also normalize wearing the same thing because we are consuming less and we are doing better. And there's no crime in that as well. I think that's something that I strongly believe in. Okay. And next up, as we are clearing the stage, we are going to welcome a very lovely lady. She is the science editor and assistant to the publisher of Ocean Geographic and founder of Blue Ring. And she also brings extensive experience across the biological sciences, including research, science communication, education, and public engagement. Can we please welcome Miss Alex Rose? Yay! Roaring applause for you! Woohoo! Thank you.
Oh my God, there's a face up there. Hi. So we're going to see how the first half of this presentation goes, because this is actually not mine. This is Michael's. So we can say all sorts of terrible things now. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, my name's Alex Rose. I've been the science editor at Ocean Geographic for the last 13 years, and I've been doing expeditions and things with OG and this whole cool group of people for about the same amount of time. So thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And so Michael's chunk of the presentation was going to be about our poles, as well as the third pole, which is where he just returned from in Tibet. So I will show you his images, but probably not talk about what he was going to talk about, because we'll see what happens. All right. Let me see. Here we go. Maybe. Which one does it? It's not. Okay. Oh, good. It's not me.
We always have backups.
That's fine. Oh, okay. No, you're good. Oh, yeah, so Michael started with this one yesterday because he likes to reference a quote by Martin Luther about essentially looking to the future, even though we might not live in it already. And the idea is planting trees essentially under the shade of which we will probably never sit. And that's sort of the idea with all of the work that we do at Ocean Geographic, is to make an impact now so that hopefully there will be less drastic of an impact on future people later. So yeah, go plant some trees, I guess. Let's see. Next. There we go. So this part of the talk is about our frozen regions of the world, or our cryosphere. This was sort of a big topic at the Explorers Club this year. We're coming into this decade of the cryosphere. So it's a time to focus on what's going on in the hopefully frozen parts of our planet. So this was a photo from our 2023 expedition to the Antarctic. You can see that there are glaciers calving on a regular basis all the time. I mean, you heard from our panelists, this was a thing that we saw the whole time. It wasn't just like we have to wait for it to happen. Like if you were there for more than 20 minutes, you were going to see it happen, which is, I think, something that's surprising when you first show up there. You're expecting this to be a very infrequent occurrence, and it's not. Let's see what else. The appearance of the Antarctic, well, the Arctic as well, but in this case, the Antarctic, is changing quite a lot. You'll notice, of course, you always want to see these big, beautiful, blue tabular icebergs, but behind it, you'll notice how much red and green there is. And that is ice algae. So ice algae is not a new thing. There's been ice algae at the poles always, actually thousands of species of it. But the density that you're finding it in is not normal. You get these huge expanses. When we've got more photos. Yeah, I mean, you see extensive amounts of green. The green and red kind of are collectively called watermelon snow, because they do sort of resemble that. And the big issue here is not that there's suddenly algae, it's the effect that algae has on the environment. So algae, as you can see, is a lot darker than snow. And this is the main issue with it, is that it's absorbing so much more of that energy from the sun. So it then further melts the snow, which grows more algae, which leaves more dark space available for the sun. So it's sort of this positive feedback loop of a dark color on a white color. And I know Juliana always talks about the sort of the reflectivity of snow. Snow and ice has a characteristic called albedo, and that's how reflective something is. And snow generally has a very high albedo, so it's very reflective, which means it doesn't absorb much heat or energy. And dark colors, like the land or in this case the algae that you're seeing, are quite dark. And instead they absorb all of that energy and it gets distributed to the world around it, and that melts even more things. So you can see it's certainly not confined to just small areas. It's pretty expansive how much of this algae-laden snow you get now, and it's not particularly encouraging. That said, we do continue our explorations, and we went last year with a group, as you know, to the Arctic. That was actually our second expedition to the Arctic within a decade. So 2015 was our first one, and then our second one was in 2025. And the changes, unfortunately, that I had been able to see just in a decade of going to these places were really drastic. So you'll see very frequently now that precipitation, which generally is supposed to be falling as snow, is increasingly more frequently falling as mist and rain. And this, of course, has a profound effect on how much snow and ice actually accumulate on land, and the quality of the ice and the snow that you get. So most of the days that we were there, it rained. And especially when we were going on land, you get rain and sleet, very different conditions than you would hope for. You go by this huge wall of an iceberg and there are waterfalls pouring off of it everywhere. Now, that's not to say that this hasn't happened in the past. It has, but the frequency with which we're seeing these sorts of conditions is increasing on a regular basis. It does make for beautiful photos, unfortunately, but they're not usually telling a very positive story. Yeah, so this is a pretty regular occurrence now. It's a really interesting photo of the edge of a glacier. You can see all of this muddy water pouring out of it. So this is not a calving glacier. This is just an internal waterfall that's coming out of the bottom of this glacier, pouring all of this muddy water into the sea. And you can imagine this has quite an impact, not just on the structural soundness of the glacier, but everything that goes on in front of it. So there's always that. So this was, I'm glad you were all here and heard some of the cool things that we got to do on our Arctic expedition recently. Of course, there was a lot of wonderful music that happened. We've got this great exhibition that just opened today. And hopefully this will sort of open people's eyes to how the Arctic and the Antarctic are changing and the roles that we all play in that change and what we can do to help. So these, like I said, these are all Michael's. This is from his very recent trip to Tibet. So Michael has been talking about wanting to go to see snow leopards for quite a while. I know that's kind of a big one because we've seen, our polar bears in the Arctic and all of the wonderful penguins in the south. And I think the snow leopard was sort of his next thing that he had to see. So he has some really gorgeous pictures from there. I think had a really unique experience. Went with just one guide. It was just him and a guide. And I think spent about 2 weeks trekking above 4,000 meters to find snow leopards. So it's quite a beautiful area, which comes as no surprise to any of us. But it's also a part of the world that's being heavily impacted by climate change. And most of the people who live there really don't travel a lot outside of their regions. So they're seeing these changes happen, but don't really have an explanation for why they're happening, which is very different than from all of us. We all have access to that information and we know why things are happening. So I think for Michael to go somewhere and photograph a place that's very obviously changing due to all of our impacts and having to talk to somebody who has no idea why that's happening when he does was, I think, a tricky thing to navigate. So you'll see this whole Tibetan plateau area where Michael was exploring. There's quite a bit of water and used to be quite a bit more ice. It is a part of the world that is losing its ice almost faster than anywhere else. So of course, there's the actual Arctic, and then right after that is this region. And it's so critical because it impacts all of the rivers that it supplies. So you've got this huge red area of ice that's melting, and that feeds into all of the rivers around it. So you can see how many countries are impacted by what happens in the Tibetan Plateau. Every single major river of the region gets its water source from the Tibetan Plateau. So as this melts, it completely changes what's going on in those rivers, the animals that inhabit it, how they use it, as well as the quality of the water where it comes out, because everything eventually always flows out to the sea. And you can imagine when all of this melted water that probably has a whole bunch of sediment in it gets tossed out into the ocean, this can have a very negative impact on the creatures that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be impacted by a melting glacier. I mean, you see how it comes out in Thailand and the Bay of Bengal and in Pakistan, all these areas that have a need to sustain their robust fishing communities. And if these are impacted by silt and glacial meltwater, this can be a major issue for everybody without even really knowing why. So you can, I'm not sure which river this was, but can see how much sedimentation essentially has happened along the banks, and there's a much reduced water flow despite there being so much water melting. It just kind of changes the whole path of the river, which impacts the people that live there. I think this was a photo from his guide, not from Michael, of what it used to always look like at this time of year, like in January, February, because he was just there. And this year, when he was there, this is what it looked like. So if you can, I mean, for this much to change in a decade or less, it's pretty striking. And, you know, we see this not just in the cold regions of our planet, but the warmer places too. It's just the visuals are not as stark as this. It's very easy to look at this and say, wow, that's not covered in snow. But when you look at a coral reef, you don't always necessarily see these changes so obviously. So I think that's one of the most important points about making images in these places where it's changing so much, is that the visuals are so stunningly and obviously different from what they're supposed to be. It's kind of hard to look at one and then another and deny that anything's changing. Luckily, he did get his elusive snow leopards, which is great. Pretty cool. I know that they think this is just a few of his there. There were plenty more, but amazing how differently they sort of blend into a brown landscape compared to a white one. And it makes you wonder, you know, throughout, you know, like recent evolutionary history, are these animals going to selectively sort of have different color coats depending on if there's more or less snow? These are interesting things to sort of look at going forward. While it's not great that this is happening, it is an opportunity for us to learn and to observe what might be going on. So unsurprisingly, the projected numbers for what will be happening to our cryosphere in the next, you know, 50 plus years are not real great. You can see we've got these different regions. We've got the Arctic summer ice, and it's current, and then in 2050, and then projected 2029. Essentially, this is if we stay on our current trajectory, quite a bit we can expect to be lost within the next 50 plus years. The important part about all this is always that we're not there yet. You know, we're not in the red zone yet. We're not even in that yellow zone yet. So everything that we can do to try to prevent ourselves from getting there is a positive. It's absolutely no secret that we've already done a substantial amount of damage just from the way humans collectively live, and there is an amount of change that we are just going to have to accept as a new normal. As was mentioned earlier, we've already hit that 1.5 degree C change, and this is something that wasn't expected for another 15 to 20 years. So that's of course not great news, but I think as Sylvia has said many, many times in the last few days, it would be worse if we didn't know. The point is that we do know, and if we know, we have the chance to actually make changes that can help going forward. As I mentioned already, this is not just something that is limited to the cold regions of our planet. This is something, this change that we see in the warmer regions too. So this is part of what is going to be our new project going forward, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But the reason we're specifically looking at coral reefs is that we've essentially reached this first climate tipping point actually a couple years ago, and there was a big story in the Times about it. And essentially what this means is that we've hit this point at which there are changes that have taken place that are not reversible. That doesn't mean that we should stop trying. This was one of the most annoying things, actually, to me. Back in 2015, the Great Barrier Reef had a really extensive coral bleaching event. This is not there. This is in Raja Ampat, which is a place that has traditionally been extremely protected from coral bleaching events, but actually bleached last year widely for the first time that we've seen, which is, again, not a good sign. But back during the bleaching event in the Great Barrier Reef, I remember a huge story came out by a coral scientist there and got published absolutely everywhere because it had a very dramatic title, which was Obituary of the Great Barrier Reef. And that just really bothered me because when you say something like that, it means that there's no chance, that there's no hope. And that's definitely the wrong messaging. And that's not the case. I mean, a huge portion of the Great Barrier Reef has recovered since then, and that is expected, but it all depends on how we choose to present information and if we choose to latch on to the most negative points about it. So I wanted to try to push back on that as much as possible. And part of this ongoing project is to show what we do still have. Because focusing on what's already lost, while important, isn't what is going to motivate anyone to change and try to save what we've got left. So, reefs, no matter where we are, same thing like the poles, matter for a whole lot of reasons. They make up a tiny percentage of our marine environment, but a quarter of all marine life actually requires coral reefs for their survival at some point in their life. About 25% of fish species use reefs as nurseries, and these are not just your standard reef fish. These are sometimes huge and very commercially important species like tuna and swordfish and all the things that are on people's plates for a lot of money. And if they didn't have places to grow up, they wouldn't be available to us for any of the many reasons that we might want them to be. So in addition to that, thousands of species of corals and countless other invertebrates all use reefs for their survival at some point during their lifetimes. Now, the thing with corals that I think gets glossed over a lot is that they are actually living animals, and I think we forget that sometimes. Corals, especially hard corals, because of their structure and the fact that they add this sort of architectural quality to a reef, makes us think that they're not alive, and that is entirely untrue. They couldn't be building if they were not living. So corals, even though they don't have big faces and great personalities like whales and dolphins and sea turtles, they're still very much alive and very much in need of our attention. So while I'm not going to go and draw faces on the corals for you, I do want to show you a little bit of a close-up of what they look like. So if you zoom in on a skinny little branch of coral, like what we just saw, it's covered in little polyps. And a polyp is essentially like a little face on a coral. So right at the center of those tentacles is a mouth. So corals, especially the ones that photosynthesize, actually use two different ways of eating. They can physically eat because they can use their tentacles to grab things out of the water column and they're sticky, or they can use those little brown cells. So those are called zooxanthellae, and those are a symbiotic algae that live inside of their tissues. And it's a great symbiotic arrangement, which is why they're called symbiodinium. That's what they look like under a microscope, and they photosynthesize. So in exchange for photosynthesizing and making all of these sugars and amino acids, the coral gives them a safe place to live so they don't have to be swimming out in the ocean. So it's a great relationship between the two of them. So you've got your coral, your zooxanthellae, and then this is all part of a calcified coral skeleton. So coral skeleton is actually made out of the same stuff as our bones. It's all calcium carbonate, and corals have an underlying skeleton, which becomes visible only when a coral gets sick, which I'll tell you about in a moment. So reefs, as you can imagine, whether you are in them scuba diving or not, which is a great place to be, they do a lot of great things for us. They generate oxygen, they provide us with food, they give many people jobs all around the world. They're a wonderful place to visit to relax because they are beautiful. They are a carbon sink, which is critical because this means it's an ecosystem that hangs on to more carbon than it releases. In a world where we burn through a lot of carbon for all the things that we do, it's important that we have ecosystems that can hang on to that or buffer us from the impacts. If it weren't for the vast amount of carbon that the ocean is capable of absorbing, our climate would have much, much wider swings that we really, as a species, couldn't tolerate. The oceans have made a stable environment for us that we wouldn't have without them. They're also a storm buffer. This is the case with mangroves and seagrass beds as well. They provide this 3D structure along our coastlines that can break up to 90% of the wind and wave energy, so that when typhoons and cyclones actually come hit our tropical shores, that is buffered massively if we have intact coastal ecosystems. If those are gone, these winds and waves just hit our shores going much faster and much stronger, which is a huge problem, of course, for the people who live there. So they help us there. As mentioned, they are a nursery for juvenile fish species. They're also incredible biodiversity hotspots. They're places for things to hide out so that species can survive without too many external forces, and they're then, give us an ability to also find new medicines, which is a cool thing called bioprospecting. Frequently, we can test for the types of chemicals that are in some of these marine creatures. Sponges, surprisingly enough, have some of the most incredible anti-cancer drugs. And it's an amazing thing that we wouldn't even know about if we weren't looking. So every time, we have a reef system that gets degraded that we don't get to figure out what's in it first, we're losing out on learning what was there and how it could potentially help us. Of course, unfortunately, there are lots of threats to our reefs, the big one, of course, being our changing climate. Despite the fact that reefs are extremely resilient, they have evolved to exist within quite a narrow range of temperatures. So when temperatures swing outside of what is considered normal or average or tolerable for corals, it's extremely stressful for them. And stress generally manifests in coral bleaching, which I'll show you in a minute. So we have, of course, our changing climate. Part of that is ocean acidification from all of the increased CO2 load from our activities. Coastal development can be an issue if it's not done sustainably. Overfishing is unsurprisingly a huge problem. A gigantic number of people around the world depend on marine protein as their main source of protein. But for a lot of us, it doesn't need to be the main thing. So overfishing and figuring out better ways to use our marine resources that don't decimate them is really critical going into the future. This includes mitigating how many destructive fishing methods are out there, but that is a whole other discussion. Pollution can come in a lot of forms. Of course, the most obvious one is what we see, which is generally plastic pollution. Single-use plastics are a huge source of problems in the marine world, but outside of just our single-use stuff, fishing nets actually are probably the largest source of marine debris. You've probably heard about some of the ocean gyres, these parts of the ocean where these large bodies of plastic have sort of started circulating. And the biggest one is the giant Pacific garbage patch. And it is larger than the state of Texas, which is pretty dang large. And this is a huge plastic patch with floating garbage in it. And about 80% of what's in it is derelict fishing gear. So the reason that this is such an issue is that it doesn't just float around and not do any more damage. It's called ghost fishing gear because it continues catching things while it's out there. Nets don't just stop becoming an issue just because they're not directly in use. They still continue floating around the sea, capturing a huge number of marine mammals, seabirds, fishes, and everything that it's not really meant to be catching anymore. So paying attention to how we're fishing, if we're going to fish, is a really important thing going forward. Part of this whole issue is paying attention to our coastal habitats and making sure that our use of land doesn't impact the underwater world, or at least doesn't any more than it needs to. When we do a lot of construction on coastal areas, if it's not done properly, this can release tons of sediment into our reef systems, and this can coat or smother the corals, which means they'll die if they don't have access to sunlight. As a diver and part of the dive industry, careless tourism is also an issue that is certainly has to be paid attention to, because while there are not millions of divers in every country, it doesn't take a lot of them to make an impact if they're not doing it right. So our reefs definitely have a lot to overcome. The biggest issue, as you can imagine, is bleaching, as I mentioned earlier, and this is directly tied to temperature. So corals, as you saw earlier, have little creatures that live inside them, a little algae that they live with. And when the corals get stressed because it's too hot, they bleach. And what that means is that they expel that algae from their tissues. Now, this doesn't mean that the coral dies immediately. It doesn't. The coral can live for sometimes months in a bleached state. But during that time, they're hardly eating anything. So essentially what's happening is the coral is slowly sort of starving to death. And you won't see it because it just looks white. The coral just looks white, and that's it. If the water temperature decreases soon enough, it starts to recover, and those algae will recolonize it, and it'll go back to its normal color and hopefully recover. But if the water stays extremely warm for too long, the corals will not regain their algae, and then will be colonized by different nuisance species, which is what you see all the way on the end, and that is not a living coral. That is not something that can come back. So bleached coral is not dead coral. It's essentially a warning sign that it needs to be paid a lot more attention to. This was actually during that Great Barrier Reef bleaching event that I was mentioning earlier. It's what it should look like, what it looks like when corals bleach, and then if they don't recover, you wind up with this dead reef. As you can imagine, not a lot of things live on a dead reef. It changes all of the species that live there. So it doesn't mean that you won't ever find fish, doesn't mean that it's a completely useless habitat, but it of course changes what that habitat looks like. And it's primarily algae based. So you'll see more fish that graze, things that will eat the algae, and everything else that would instead be eating tiny fish goes away. So most of our commercially available species will completely disappear off of a reef that's degraded like that. So, in order to bring more attention to our coral reefs and hopefully provide an important baseline going forward, we're launching this program called Anima High. This is, well, it's sort of kind of started already, but it will officially be launching this and next year when we start doing reef expeditions. So at the end, you'll see which ones we've got slated for the next few years, and maybe you can be part of them. So the goal here is very similar to what you're seeing here at our gallery today, which is sort of talking about the importance for global climate action through the use of art in forms of photography, music, and everything we've got at our disposal, so that hopefully people who would normally be paying attention to these issues might be motivated to become part of the solution. We've got a great group of people involved. Dr. Earl will be part of our team, which is wonderful, as well as a whole host of other incredible scientists. Dr. Carden Wallace is a very famous marine scientist out of Australia, Dr. Emma Camp as well, and then Dr. Peter Harrison and Paul Muir, who are both coral scientists. So we've got a great group of people. Can't really think of better ones, so that alone is a great reason to be involved. I don't want to dwell, of course, on the bad stuff too much if we don't have to, but we are pretty rapidly losing coral reefs. About half of the world's coral reefs are gone, and most of that has happened in the last 50 years. So change is definitely accelerating, and it's moving quickly, and it's not just because our planet is warming, it's because of all the other factors that I listed too. This is not just one issue, it's corals being impacted by 50 different things, and so they're having a hard time sort of maintaining when we're throwing so many things at them on a regular basis. Mass bleaching events are becoming more and more common, where large portions of coral reefs are bleaching entirely for a season and then sometimes not recovering. As you can imagine, bleaching is a very stressful thing for corals to have to go through, so every time that happens, it's like getting really sick and then having to recover from that. And that's hard to do year after year after year, and eventually it will get you. So without some pretty urgent action here, annual bleaching is scheduled to become sort of a normal global occurrence within the next 10 to 15 years. So anything we can do to stem that would be ideal. So the Anima High project is, of course, meant to be more than just an art project, though it is that too. But it's a moral document for science and policy. We want people to be able to look back at what we've done and sort of use it as a framework for what to do going forward. So the goal will be to not just photograph these areas, but to collect data. And that's not to say that data isn't being collected at a lot of these reefs already. It is. But to have it all in one place and presented in a very visually appealing format that I think is much more digestible, I think will be quite helpful. Everything is going to be geo-referenced and geotagged, of course, so that if people, any of you, want to go see these reefs outside of when we're actually working on these projects, we would encourage you to, because there's no such thing as having too much data. That's never bad. And it's a way to stay involved in the project as we go forward, because it's not just looking at reefs 1 year. The greater plan is actually to come back to all the same reefs in 2055. So that's actually why Michael has me talking about it, because I have either fortunately or unfortunately been tasked with doing this project again in 2055. And I truly hope that because of decisions that I hope we will have made and not made, that I will actually have reefs to go see in 30 years. So it's meant to be sort of a visual testament to the choices that I hope we make. So yeah, I want to... oh yes, of course, we'll have a book like we always do. There will be a traveling exhibition and then a readily accessible digital archive. These are expeditions for 2027 that I hope you'll consider joining us on. The ones in orange are probably going to be the most flexible in terms of how many people we can take with us. Some of these other locations are quite small, like we won't have a ton of space for people, but that doesn't mean you can't be involved. Like I said, you can visit these places outside of when we're there as well. So we've got some great ones. Yeah, please feel free to take a picture and then bother Michael about it. You should come. But they'll be pretty incredible, and there will be more locations than this. I think we're targeting at least 20 different spots. But it should be great. Anyway, this is sort of a tipping point for a lot of our world's ecosystems, and not that it's a great place to be, but it's the one that we are. So it's, I think, time for everybody to start making some big choices, because, yeah, it's up to us to make a difference now. Yeah, and thank you for being here today. It's been great. I hope you get a chance to go check out the gallery, and please, if you take pictures and things, share them, tag us in it. We always like to have a bigger presence on social media, so thanks.
Thank you so much to Alex. I love all the superhero terms that we saw today. First, it was superheroes, and then climate avengers. And just now I saw another one. It was ocean guardians. So I believe that we have had many, many takeaways from this morning. Did you enjoy yourself? Yes, great job. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Karine once again. Later on, you will also be treated to a tour at the Green Gallery. And also, if you are a little bit hungry, you can complete the tour. And we also have a new set of buffet lunch for all of you. And I hope that we have great takeaways, and we will hope to also inspire us, inspire the people around us, inspire the next generation of climate avengers. See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.